Everybody. So we're going to do another round of authors behaving badly, and we're going to look at Kouri Richin today. Wow. This one it's a humdinger, I tell you. It's about, okay, this woman, her name is Kouri Richin, and she recently published a children's book about grief and about helping children process the death of a family member, right? Seems like a nice thing. Says she wants to help people. And then this week she was arrested for the murder of her husband. So essentially she allegedly murdered her husband and then wrote a book and tried to cash in on it. I mean, that is all kinds of creepy. So let's have a look here. The same story seems to be on several different news outlets: Huffington Post, CTV, CNN. So I'm gonna use the one from ABC News. Utah woman who's published a children's book on processing grief following the death of her husband last year has now been accused of poisoning him with a lethal dose of fentanyl. According to the reports, on March 24th, she found her husband dead at the foot of her bed after she had brought him a bedtime cocktail, a Moscow Mule. And now I had to look that up. Ugh, what a repulsive drink. It's vodka, ginger beer, and lime juice. Anyway, I grew up right on the Michigan border, and so Verner's was like a thing in Michigan, and I'll never, anytime I think of ginger beer, I think of my friend Steph going, Verner's, that shit gives me the runs. So I can't even imagine putting it in a cocktail, but I guess if you drink enough of them, you don't care anymore, right? So she brought her husband a Moscow Mule and went to check on the kids, fell asleep in the room because apparently one of her kids was experiencing some kind of night terrors. And then she went back about 3 a.m., found her husband cold and clammy, and she claims that she tried to administer CPR, but the first respondent said that she had not done any CPR due to blood from her husband's mouth. And the autopsy determined he had died from a fentanyl overdose. And she claimed that she left her phone in the bedroom, hadn't used it all night, even though the phone was unlocked and locked multiple times, and messages were sent and received during that time and deleted. So tampering with evidence too, although there's no mention of a charge of that. So there were several communications with an acquaintance who had various drug counts, and the drug connection. Sometime between December 2021 and February 2022, Kouri Richins texted this acquaintance looking for prescription pain medication. The acquaintance left hydrocodone pills at a house the defendant owned and was flipping. I'll get back to that in a minute because the house is kind of an interesting point here too. So 2 weeks later, Kouri Richins allegedly contacted the acquaintance again because her investor wanted something stronger and asked for some of the Michael Jackson stuff, asking specifically for fentanyl. The acquaintance allegedly procured 15 to 30 fentanyl pills for $900. Now, I had to look it up. I had to look up the death of Michael Jackson, and Michael Jackson didn't die of a fentanyl overdose, although I don't doubt that he might have been on it because he had taken painkillers for decades after he burned his head in that unfortunate accident. But apparently what he died of was diazepam, ativam, lorazepam, and midazolam, if I'm pronouncing that right. Diazepam and lorazepam and midazolam, these are all these are anti-anxiety medications. And then the other one, the midazolam, that's a roofie. It's like it suppresses memories. So no, Michael Jackson wasn't part of the cocktail, wasn't fentanyl, at least according to Wikipedia and these reports. But anyway, I had to look that up and see, because I didn't remember fentanyl being one of the things. Not that I know anything about these things. Fentanyl is apparently a synthetic opioid. It's like designer heroin, but it's like way stronger than heroin, which is why it's so easy to overdose on it. So apparently, after asking for this Michael Jackson stuff, there was a Valentine's Day dinner. Eric, the husband, became very ill, believed he'd been poisoned. So the Valentine's Day, she tried to put it in a sandwich. Eric broke into hives, couldn't breathe, used an EpiPen, and passed out. And then he called his business partner about the incident. And then apparently she contacted the acquaintance again, asking for another $900 worth of fentanyl pills. And 6 days later, her husband was found dead of a fentanyl overdose. She's also been charged with 3 counts of possession of drugs with intent to distribute. No comment. Married 9 years, 3 young sons. Several of his family members told investigators they suspected his wife had something to do with his death. And he warned them that if anything happened to him, she was to blame. And apparently they were... just prior to his death, Eric Richins removed his wife from his will and life insurance and was looking into a divorce and wanted his kids taken care of, according to the search warrant. The couple was allegedly arguing over a $2 million property she wanted to flip, and I'll get back to that house in a minute because it's kind of interesting. The day after Eric's death, his wife allegedly signed the closing papers on the home. The search warrant noted that in January of 2022, Kouri Richins allegedly updated her husband's life insurance policy agreement with his business partner to make herself the sole beneficiary. The insurance company notified her husband, did she think they weren't going to tell him? And his business partner, and they changed it back to being each other's beneficiary, according to the search warrant. Kouri Richins told KTVX during her interview, which I will link in the doobly-doo, hopefully it won't be taken down, last month for Good Things Utah, his death completely took us all by shock. Maybe it took her sons by shock. My kids and I kind of wrote this book on the different emotions and grieving processes that we've experienced. I'm hoping it can kind of help other kids deal with this and kind of find happiness some way or another. Wow. So I had to do a little bit of digging, and yes, that news broadcast is still up there. I took a listen to it. She's like this perfectly chipper, super mom sounding woman, and she's talking about, she's actually writing a second book called Mom, How Far Away is Heaven? Well, I think next it's going to be Mom, When Are Visiting Hours? I shouldn't be laughing about this, but wow, the audacity to actually, I'm a big fan of write what you know. And she even says, she's like, yeah, I just went with write what I know. And it's like, yeah, you really did, didn't you? Now, Amazon, her book doesn't seem to be available anywhere, but there is still a Google Book Reviews up, and the Google Book Reviews are pretty hilarious. If Casey Anthony was a novelist, written by the murderer of her husband. Cliched dribble about grief and loss found in a million other books. What makes this one stand out is it was written by a murderer trying to make it big. The angel on the cover looks just like the murdered dad even. Creepy. Oh, and during the broadcast, she actually goes into how the illustrators made the kid in the book look like a mixture of her sons, and the angel look like her husband. She says, oh, and they did their magic, and we have these illustrations. She's so chipper about it. She murdered her husband. Can't wait for the author to start writing lesbian books in a couple years when her ass is thrown in jail. Horrible mother, wife, and human being. Looking forward to reading it, based on the reviews. She tried poisoning him on at least one prior occasion, tried to switch herself back to beneficiary of his life insurance, fed him a 5 times lethal dose of fentanyl, waited for him to die while lying in bed with one of her kids, called 911, then decided to write a book about the awful grief her children went through, losing their father, quote, unexpectedly, grief she deliberately caused, and tried to profit off of it. Mother of the year, what a dirtbag. Wow. And I'm not laughing because this is funny. This is actually a horrible situation. I feel so sorry for those kids. But wow. I mean, I understand wanting to bring attention to your stuff. I understand, wanting to profit on a really terrible thing in your life. And I do wonder the other thing that I just find baffling, I had to look up that house. That house is quite a piece of work too. Just got to do the copy paste. I got to look it back up again. Sorry. Okay, so they call it a Plywood mansion in Midway. So Kouri Richins' unfinished Midway mansion could have a buyer. The mansion broke ground in 2017 but was never finished. It's been a long-time roadside curiosity in Midway, and now it's at the center of a man's death, which prosecutors allege was murder. The 20,000 square foot mansion sits on 8.75 acres north of State Route 113. They're in Utah, by the way. In East Midway at 106 North Legacy Way, it's got a 3,000 square foot guest house too. The property was a source of disagreement in Eric and Kouri's marriage. The couple was under contract at the time of Eric's death in March 2022. The 20,000 square foot mansion sits on 8.75 acres north of State Route 113, and it's got a 3,000 square foot guest house. So this place is just massive. The property was a source of disagreement in the marriage. He thought the $2 million price tag was too high. Summit County Sheriff's deputies arrested Kouri, who's charged with murdering Eric with 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl while celebrating purchasing the house. She went on to write a children's book about grieving his death afterwards. That is some kind of narcissistic, sociopathic bullshit right there. Search warrants say Eric's family members thought he planned to tell Kouri they weren't buying the Midway mansion. The day after her husband died on March 5th, 2022, Kouri closed the deal. She had a gathering at the family home that day, and according to search warrants, it was then that Kouri learned that she'd been cut out of his will, making her financially unstable. Can you imagine going all through all of that and then finding out you're not in the will? Exactly 2 weeks after Eric died, Kouri put the home back on the market for nearly $5 million, and now there's a buyer. Realtor Mike Malmrose has been the property's listing agent since March of 2022 before Summit County authorities made the investigation public. He confirmed the mansion is now under contract at the reduced price of $3.75 million. It's still more than she paid for it. The next step is to hold the buyer's due diligence meeting Monday. After that, he'll have a better sense of if the deal will ultimately go through. Malmrose's company, Rosewood Homes, posted a concept video on YouTube last year when it went back on the market. And then it just describes the thing. If the buyer doesn't close, Malmrose says he doesn't know what the plan B would be, but he indicated a couple other buyers were interested. And she's got some expensive lawyers. Neither attorney responded to requests. And county prosecutors declined to comment. National attention the Richins case is quickly garnered. And the presumption of innocence. So yes, she is innocent until proven guilty. Fair and impartial jury, Eric's family and business partner. I'm curious about that business partner. Kouri Richins is charged with aggravated murder and 3 counts of possession, and she is to be held without bond at Summit County Jail. 3rd District Court Judge Richard Mrazek will consider whether she's a flight risk or an ongoing threat to the community. No, I don't think she's an ongoing threat to the community. I think that she is an opportunist, and I think there was a lot of money involved. That's my personal opinion, of course, not being any kind of legal expert. And I feel very sorry for her kids, and I wonder where her kids are. They must be staying with family or something. I expect probably his family. And you want to hear something really creepy is she still has a Facebook post up. And the last thing she posted was she updated her cover photo on March 25th. And it is a smiling, shiny, happy picture of the whole family. Kouri, Eric, the 3 boys, little ploofy dog. And then the profile photo is husband and kids. And it's sick. It's just creepy. So I'm gonna turn this around and I'm gonna show you this house that seems to be at the center of all of this. I mean, look at that. Is that ostentatious and kind of hideous or what? Let's see if we can get that through. Look at that thing is gigantic. It's ginormous, and there's a guest house too on the over on the property. I mean, it's look at all those roofs. Like, who needs all that? Who would ever keep that dusted? Look, there's an indoor swimming pool. Apparently, some kind of staircase to nowhere. It's like every room has some kind of bay window. And then the actual property, what it looks like right now, what's really funny, so there's the property and there's the guest house. So you can see it's not quite finished, and the really funny thing calls it a Plywood mansion in Midway. So I just thought I'd have a look at Kouri Richins, the murdering author, allegedly murdering author. Authors behaving badly. You know, you can't write this stuff. Hope you're reading lots of horror. Have a great day.